8 psychoanalytic mechanisms, split. Last time we started off with the mechanism of split. We said a single mechanism can lead to a multiplicity of disorders described in different chapters of DSM. Therefore, the 175 or odd psychologically heavy disorders of DSM-5, if you reduce them to mechanisms, you will be able to reduce them to not more than 35 mechanisms delineated in various schools of psychoanalysis. And if you use only one school, you will look at 4 to 5 mechanisms only into which the whole DSM has to reduce and converge to. We then took a look at what the split was, how it started with Melanie Klein, the paranoid schizoid position, the depressive position, and so on. We took a look at various phenomena related to the phenomena of split. Today we move forward. We take a look at split now as something that prepares the mind for mature thinking. It's like cranking up the mind. We can start with what Beyond said, that there are sensations, amorphous and inane, sensations which are yet to be given a name. And these sensations, or the beta particles as Beyond would call it, they are yet not available to the mind for higher order processing in terms of fantasy or in terms of thoughts. And this fountain of unsettling, almost fragmenting sensations, overwhelming sensations, they reduce to the bearable intensity when the mother gives them a name. The name closes the infinity, and what was completely inane now has a word given to it, now has a sign given to it. So when the split operates, the feelings, the affects which are experienced, the thoughts which come, they are all too much, they are too overwhelming for the child till the mother gives them a name. So this giving the name to close the infinity, not necessarily to erase the infinity, but to close the infinity in the sense of too many different overwhelming sensations, unfocused on any object. That comes to a close, although the experience of omnipotence, where the omnipotence is focused on one object, that still remains. So the name closes the infinity. And the second aspect of, so one is when the split is on, there are many phenomena in between the two continuums which are extremely unsettling in the sheer sense of being an infinity of variety which the name closes. Second is the split, the ends of the continuum in one sense take one away from that unbearable middle, because on the ends the omnipotence is focused on an object. So what happens is the either ends of the split are less unsettling compared to the middle of the split. So it's in one sense an affective necessity. The split actually is an affective necessity. It's a coping mechanism of that unsettling time. The split also is a primary attempt at thinking. Often a question comes, do we think between dreaming or do we dream between thinking? And Klein is very clear that we think between dreaming, meaning dreaming is a more primary, more natural, more primitive, and a more constitutional activity, whereas thinking is a more acquired skill. And we start with fantasizing, and then we come to what we call rational adult thinking. In that sense, the early life fantasy also is an attempt at learning to think. Just as we saw, the mother gives a name and the name closes the infinity. And the mother holds that unsettling feeling as a container before she gives a name to close that infinity. And in this process of learning how to give a name to a set of unsettling sensations is something that the child learns along with the mother, who acts as a container and also a teacher, a teaching container. The second aspect of learning is that just as we learn how to walk and we fumble and fall down many times, and we are fumbling for quite some time unbalanced, trying to walk, trying to be balanced. Similarly, fantasy is that fumbling to think, that we want to think in early childhood and we are fumbling to think. And that fumbling is actually that process of fantasy. And from that, slowly, a structured, realistic, adult cause and effect thinking that emerges. So, in that sense, split is also a cranking up the mind phenomena, preparing the mind for thinking phenomena. That early on, the mind is incapable of thinking in shades of gray, which requires more sophistication, more maturity. But it is easier to think on the extremes of a continuum. And this thinking at the extremes is like very primitive primary thinking, which as adults also we know that it's easy to think about somebody being all good or all bad. It is difficult to think of somebody as being a mixture of two different things and then to arrive at a consolidated position. So, the split thinking actually is a more primitive thinking as we learn how to think. And once we are, it's a simple thinking, simplest form of thinking. And as we are comfortable with the simple form of thinking, then we can go to the more complicated, integrated, consolidated thinking. So we start with a continuum, the easy way of thinking, and then we look at the range of the continuum and go into more complicated, uh, multi uh, multivariable consolidated thinking. So in a way, we first think of simples before we think of the compounds. We first think of extreme simples, complete good, complete bad, big or small, and then we look at the compounds in the middle of the continuum. Analogy you can look at is of primary colors and secondary colors. So initially we learn to recognize the primary colors, and then we combine the primary colors to come at secondary colors, and then we have more shades. Combine the tertiary, secondary to make tertiary. Combine the tertiary, and then you have so many shades. But we start with the primary, the simples. Another aspect of thinking also is think of the concrete before the abstract. So the split also operates in terms of presence and absence. And here the concrete thinking comes in. And the concrete thinking is also seen in severe regression of the psychotic. That if the regression is very severe, then concrete thinking comes in. And another aspect of omnipotence is, of split is the omnipotence, which is innate and it's a universal quest of everybody. The pervasive quest of omnipotence. So split, if you look at it from the point of view of learning to think, from point of view of learning to bear feelings, from the point of view of learning to name feelings, then it's a kind of a primitive proto-phenomena before more sophisticated adult phenomena can come make a appearance. So it is in a way cranking up the mind, getting the mind ready for later more adult thinking. Now, how do we connect split with loss and attack? As we saw, the connection between split and early loss is very clear. That if the object, the breast or the mother in whom the investment is made, if that is not available for quite a long time, the child perceives an abandonment, a loss. And the interesting part about this loss is that if we talk of orphans, the loss is real. But if we talk about 95% of people who experience loss, they are not really orphans. So the loss is perceptual, not real. The important point then is when the mother returns or the breast returns, why is the loss not undone? Why does the presence not erase the consequences of the absence? And that is a very interesting point to note. And the answer to that is that early life we internalize whatever is presented before us. A good object, we internalize a good object. Bad object, we internalize a bad object. A cold object, we internalize a cold object. A depressed, dead object, we internalize a dead object. So there is a sort of a natural automation working out there. And what we internalize, it sort of suffuses, spreads out inside of us, both in our biology and our psychology. And what we have internalized, that also serves as a template for our own system to manufacture something like that for our own. So what has been internalized has a shelf life. But learning from that, something of our own is manufactured, which is going to be there forever. And that takes the template of what is internalized. So even when what is internalized, the shelf life of that is over, what was internalized, something akin to that got manufactured by the inner system as a permanent object to fill up the vacuum inside. So early loss can lead to too many experiences of the bad breast or the bad mother, and the same is then internalized and the split remains open. It's also important to note at what time the loss has happened and what happened before the loss and after the loss. If before the loss the child had a very good experience of presence of the good object, then the loss is not as severe. So apart from the duration and the intensity of the loss and the frequency of the loss as experienced, at what time the loss is experienced and before that for how long the good experiences were there, that's very important um, element in the phenomena of loss and therefore the phenomena of split. This also leads us to the central point that the core of psychic health and even the biological health to a great extent is what is called internalization of good, reliable, stable object. And this internalization has to further lead to creation of a good, reliable, stable object of our own. And this leads us to the model that I have created called the valley junction model. That what happens when the loss is considerable and the consequences of the loss cannot be undone. The loss has been so severely felt, even when the good object arrives, makes a comeback. So the valley junction model, those who are interested can go into the lecture on the valley junction model. The idea is this, that imagine a car or your life going on the road smoothly and suddenly loss happens and you fall into a valley. And inside the valley are very difficult feelings of anxiety, rage, helplessness, powerlessness, guilt, and so on. But there is no way you can jump back to the road. You can only jump to the mountain top. And once you do that, there is a binary which comes into play in the mind. You are either at the mountain top or you are in the valley. And when you are in the valley, you develop symptoms of histrionicity, dependence. When you're at the top, you develop symptoms of narcissism, antisocial personality disorder, and so on. So both the points are difficult, and the solution is to come back to the ground on the road, but that cannot be done unless the valley is filled up. And valley cannot be filled up unless good, safe objects present to us and we are able to internalize them and manufacture something like them to fill up the valley. And then lastly, there is also something called the good split. We discussed this fact that the split is not necessarily a evil, it's a natural developmental process. And if it does not open up, we remain perpetually confused. We can't make out the difference between the good and the bad. So the split is very necessary to operate at the two ends of the continuum and to open up the continuum. Otherwise, we are confused in between if the continuum does not open up fully. So what is called in Hindi, the Mitra Bodh and the Shatru Bodh, they don't develop if the split is not completely properly opened. The split can also be opened for a purpose. When you require manic energy, manic motivation, getting completely lost into ecstasy or those kind of uh, non-normal states, states of high, states of extreme high, states of extreme low, rare states, spiritual states, high motivation states, high courage states, high energy states, we have to open up the split for good. So there is also a good opening of the split. So to say the split is all bad and the depressive position is all good is a split about the split. There is a good split and there is a bad depressive position. Right? Both of them are as true as in general it is true that split is can lead to pathology and depressive position can lead to the healing of pathology. So there is also something called good split in which extraordinary work happens, extraordinary art happens, extraordinary uh, achievements of courage they happen, extraordinary achievements of energy they happen. So this is also something called the good split. Now let us look at the variations. First, we saw about split that the split is not closed. That's the first problem. Second problem, split does not open. So split not opening completely is the first problem. Split not closing, second problem. Split closing, but the closing being very fragile. At the slightest of stress, the split again opening up which means the closing is fragile. That's the third problem. Split not opening up for a good purpose is the fourth problem. Split opening and closing rapidly, that's another problem. It leads to what is called perplexity. Slightly different from confusion. In confusion, one cannot make out whether something is good or bad because the split has never opened completely. In perplexity, one is not able to make a judgment whether something is good or bad. The same thing looks good and alternatively good looks bad. And this flip-flops very soon. Just as a split opens and closes, something can appear good and not good, and one can be perplexed at the phenomena. The split leads to extreme thinking, what is called catastrophic thinking. Extreme thinking can be of catastrophic type, usually it is. Open split leads to search of omnipotence, and the split also is very important in all serious cases of psychotherapy as well as of psychosomatic sicknesses. And this brings us to homeopathy. That split is a very important element for chronic sicknesses that homeopathy tries to heal. Because if we go deeper in any adult sickness which is chronic, usually we will see some problem with the Oedipus or with the split, or usually both. So let us look at the homeopathy aspect. Before we go into it, let's just have some discussion on homeopathy and psychoanalysis. As a system, psychoanalysis is a causal system. Like, we always try to answer why this symptom has developed. Homeopathy, on the contrary, is a phenomenological system. It does not get into the causality. It is a cluster trait system where if you have a collection of traits, we know how to heal. So homeopathy, you'll ask the question, who is net mure? And if he is net mure, give him net mure, he will be healed. Psychoanalysis will get into why is he net mure? What is wrong with his Oedipus? What is wrong with his split? What is wrong with his internalization of objects? What is wrong with his bottled up rage? What is wrong with his self-formation? Why has he become net mure? Why is he not able to release all the feelings and be like others? Why does he invite tragedies one after the other? So homeopathy is, in that sense, is a phenomenological system. Psychoanalysis is a causal system. Now there is a movement in homeopathy from a pure phenomenological database system, which was in materia medica and repertory, to more categorical concepts like the concept of miasm, the concept of kingdom, the concept of subclass and superclass. These are all categorical concepts which are not pure data driven concepts. These are theory driven, inference driven concepts. And when you put all this together, you come to a something called an ideal method. And one of the videos I saw of Dr. Shankaran, he talks about a very good analogy to find the right remedy. The analogy is this. He says, imagine the remedy is sitting in the middle of the room, which has 7 windows. The first window is of materia medica, second of repertory, third of miasms, fourth of kingdom, fifth of class, sixth of subclass, and the seventh of superclass. And if you open any window, you see the same remedy. If that happens, the chances of the remedy being the correct remedy are very high. Now, one more thing you add there is of superclass. the most recent categorical concept. And superclass is based upon a central dynamic. And this connects very closely to psychoanalysis because psychoanalysis also is based on a causal central dynamic. So there are two important points here. If you have a window of 7 windows, if you have a room of 7 windows, add one more window of psychoanalysis. And second, apply psychoanalysis to these category concepts. And the way we can start off is to apply it to the periodic table and see what insights come out and how the two can enrich each other, psychoanalysis and homeopathy. So let us look at the periodic table. And given here is row wise what homeopathy says, column wise what homeopathy says. Now, what do we get from the split in terms of the periodic table? The more severe problems which are on the left hand side, the first 3 or 4 columns, they will definitely have the split open. Others may or may not have the split open, may have just the Oedipal problem or may have just something else. But the first 3 or 4 rows, 4 columns, they will definitely have the split open in various ways. The more severe the pathology is towards the top, the more the split will be open and the earlier the split will become open. Earlier the loss or the attack phenomena responsible for the split would have taken place. And less would be the good experiences before the split. So if we look at hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, till lithium, the split would have, the loss would have happened very early or the attack would have happened very early. Split, the roots of the split would have been laid very early and good experiences before the split would be very less. As you go down, the split will have occurred later and the duration for which good experiences are there before the split, they will go on increasing. And as you go on the right, the phenomena of split will start receding in its intensity. If you look at it from another point of view, the dependence is highest in this side. Dependence, I am not good enough, that is highest on this side, at least till security. So in this area, the dependence is highest, the split operation is the highest. As you go from here to here, you will move from dependence to, if you look at here, point number 7 and point number 8. In this entire periodic table, these are the only 2 areas, or sorry, I should say 9, 8 and 9, which are more healthy, and 10 partly healthy, and then narcissism starts. In 10 itself, narcissism starts. So we see dependence in these columns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, reducing dependence, of course, 7, 8, very low dependence, 9, one of the most healthiest parts, and then turning to narcissism. So we have the left hand side of the first, if you take the 1, 2, 3, 4, they are more dependent, and as you go towards the right side of the table, dependence reduces, comes to a healthy point, and then narcissism starts, and then disintegration starts. So from narcissism, we move more towards a borderline constitution or a psychotic constitution. So you can actually have a sine curve of self-esteem, healthy self-esteem, that your very low healthy self-esteem goes up and it again comes down. If you talk in terms of healthy self, it's very low, goes high and again comes down. On right hand side is narcissism, on left hand side is dependence. And I am not good enough, and this dependence often, instead of dependence, you can also see histrionicity. On the right hand side, it can be narcissism coupled with antisocial personality disorder. So it is like beginning is the start of the game and remembering is the end of the game, and 17 is completely out of the game. So if you look at anything in terms of hyper and the normal, healthy normal, you will see self-esteem here. Okay. So self-esteem, if you take, this is the hypo part. This in between is the healthy part, and then the narcissistic part, and then the disintegrating part. So if we take an overview of the split, these are the phenomena associated with the split. Phenomena of loss, attack, omnipotence, beauty, envy, the epistemological phenomena, affective phenomena, template creating phenomena, defensive phenomena, pathological phenomena, the ability to make choice, a natural developmental process, and the positive aspect of split. All these phenomena are associated with the phenomena of split. Any questions?
No, sir.
So we have introduced the concept of the split. Now let us go to the concept of the heat system. How we are going to develop this concept of the split using Eastern concepts, as well as how we are going to take it deeper. So if you look at heat psychotherapy system, it's a 7-point system. Case history, psychological testing, diagnosis, pathogenesis, holistic healing plan, therapy and supervision. What we will now focus is 4 and 5. First we'll focus on 4 and then on 5. So let us go in details of the 4. How do you do pathogenesis in heat? So heat is a system that I have developed. It stands for holistic elemental analysis and therapy. So first we take the story of the symptoms. That the symptoms often have a story. And the story of the symptoms is very interesting and important both. The story of the symptoms may relate to the developmental story of the symptom itself. It may relate to all that is associated with the symptoms. It may relate to all that happens in the episode. It may relate to how the person narrates it as a story to you. Then we have the holistic school analysis. How we use different schools of psychoanalysis to do holistic analysis of a given set of symptoms based upon the case history. Then we do a core process analysis. So let me go slow here. Let us say, let me take an example, a hypothetical example. Let us say there is a patient who comes with schizophrenia, delusion of persecution, and the person feels that somebody is out there to attack him, and that person comes on a chariot in the evening. So he starts hallucinating that somebody is coming on a chariot to attack him. And this happens by and large in the evening. This is the symptom of somebody with schizophrenia, diagnosed with schizophrenia by the psychiatrist, specifically with delusion of persecution. Now the question is, what is the story of this symptom? How has this symptom developed? Has he always seen something like this, or has somebody gone from the horse to the chariot? Has the story developed, or has the story remained constant? Second, how does the person understand this? What is his own analysis of this story? And the third is, when we apply psychoanalysis, how do we understand the symptoms? What do we see behind the symptoms in terms of the psychoanalytic story? Based upon that, we use different schools of psychoanalysis to see what will work there. Say, for example, in the instance I narrated, let us say you take the case history, and delusion of persecution can happen because of a split open. It can also happen because of unresolved Oedipus or unresolved homosexuality. Let us say in case of this person, the case history tells us it has to do with unresolved homosexuality. Now what happens? We apply all the schools, we look at the case, and we come to a conclusion. In this particular case, the Freudian school is likely to apply better. And we take the Freud's explanation of delusion of persecution, that it is essentially rooted in unresolved homosexuality. So this is the holistic school analysis. We take the complaints, we take the symptoms, apply all the schools of psychoanalysis to the entire case study, and try to find out which school applies best. And then what is the phenomena that school puts forward as the causal phenomena for this disorder? That is holistic school analysis. It will give us a core process. For example, in the example that I gave, the Freudian explanation for delusion of persecution will be repressed homosexuality, and the core process will be like this. In the person, because of high femininity in male and high masculinity in female, there will be attraction for the gender of the person of the same gender. So when our patient looks at a handsome man, what goes on in his mind is this: I like you, I love you. Now the superego comes in. This is unacceptable. So superego brings in the reaction formation defense. And then I love you turns into the opposite, I hate you. So I like you, I love you, I hate you. Superego comes in, converts love into hate by a defense of reaction formation. I hate you progresses because as I like you and I love you progresses, similarly I hate you also progresses. The more on this side, the more on that side, because that side is nothing but a converted this side. So I hate you slowly converts to I will kill you. Again, not acceptable to superego. Again, defense of projection, and it's projected outwards now on that person, and this person feels threatened. He wants to kill me, when in fact it is he who wants to kill the other. So the death wish is projected onto the other, and now the other looks threatening because he now appears to have the desire to kill us, when in fact we have the desire to kill him in reality, in the unconscious mind. So the core phenomena then becomes I like you, I love you, I hate you, I will kill you, you will kill me. And once you will kill me comes in, the paranoia sets in, and a story develops how we are going to kill. So set of symptoms, a strange story develops. So this is the core process. So we have the story of the symptoms. We apply various schools. We find out one school or two schools which applies, and we find out the core process or core processes which are at work. So the core process is I like you, I love you, I hate you, I will kill you, you will kill me. And therefore the delusion of persecution. This is the core process. Now in that core process, we look at parts of the core process. That which part of the core process is so critical that if that small part is changed, the result of that core process will not be the same. If I look at this core process, I like you, I love you, I hate you, I will kill you, you will kill me, delusion of persecution. So if I look at the transformation of I love you to I hate you, this is where the key is. If this transformation had not taken place, rest of the process would fall by, and you would not have delusion of persecution. Is it understood? It's a very important point. How do you
Yes, sir.
deconstruct the core process? That you look at the core process, which is I like you, I love you, I hate you, I will kill you, you will kill me, delusion of persecution. So in this, find some spot which is so critical that if it was not what it has been, the end result would have been different. The person would not be suffering from delusion of persecution. So the first core point here is the translation of I love you to I hate you. If this had not happened, rest of it would not have happened. So this is a critical point in the core process. So in the core process, we find the critical process. Are you getting it? In the entire core process, we find the critical event. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So we get complaints, we make a diagnosis, we do holistic school analysis, we find out which school explains it best and what is the core process of that school given to explain this sickness. Then that core process we deconstruct into parts and we find out what is the most critical event in the core process. In our case, the most critical event is translation of I love you to I hate you because of superego, guilt. I love you is not acceptable to the superego. Guilt comes in. And guilt makes sure that I love you is converted to I hate you and one's homosexuality is denied. We have a minute to go. So let us break for a moment and reassemble after 10 minutes. Any questions you have? Feel free. Next part, please bring in cases also. We'll discuss cases. 10 minutes.